Wearing pink is illegal. Like, hello? You're crazy. Donny Osmond is illegal. Basically, everything is illegal. And then, one by one, you know, because they happen one by one, you don't take them seriously. But then, by the time you realize what has happened, you have drowned. It's too late. Now, if you speak up, somebody will put a gun to your head and will pull the trigger. No kidding. So what are you going to do now? Now, if you're 13 or 14 or 15 years old, you're going to do something. And that's what we did. Now, recently in Tehran, you heard about the protests that followed that bizarre election that put Ahmadinejad back in power. Well, it was a fraud. Of course, Ahmadinejad is a fraud. And everybody, well, not everybody, but most people in Iran know that, and they laugh at him. But this didn't begin last summer. It began in 1980. And it began with my generation on the streets of Tehran yelling and screaming against the Islamic government, yelling and screaming against the hijab, and young girls yelling and screaming that they wanted to become judges, that they wanted to be able to wear pink above anything else. That was my generation. And every single one, now back then there was no YouTube, so you didn't see it happen on your television screens. The world was consumed by the American hostages. But do you know who the real hostages were and still are in Iran? The Iranian people. They are the real hostages. And I was one of them. I was out there on the street. And every single demonstration was attacked by the Revolutionary Guards. There would be bullets flying everywhere. There would be tear gas. And you know what? When you're 15, it's like being in an episode of 24. It's amazing. The adrenaline, it wipes out your logic and you just run. And if you're a good runner and you make it home, you're going to go again tomorrow. And you know what? I thought I was going to make it. It seemed like I was invincible, like some movie star. But then things began to change. Well, I had spoken out in school. Gradually, all of our teachers were replaced with fanatic young women who were not qualified to teach, and they were basically 18-year-olds who were there to brainwash us. This was the Islamic cultural revolution in my country. Where do you start a cultural revolution? You start a cultural revolution not even in universities. You start it in high schools. You brainwash 13, 14, 15-year-olds. That's what you do. And that's exactly what happened in my school. So we were sitting through 7-8 hours of government propaganda every day. Finally, I raised my hand one day, just out of frustration. I wasn't following any political ideology. I was a Catholic. I went to Mass every single day. So I raised my hand and I said to the calculus teacher, Miss, can you please teach calculus instead of propaganda? And she said, you don't like what I teach? Out. I collected my books and walked out. And the majority of my classmates followed. We were standing in the hallway laughing our heads off because we had just walked out. It was funny. So then we went in the yard, and by noon the school was on strike. And when the principal came out and she said, what do you want? Why aren't you going back to class? We said, we want calculus. And then we looked at each other and we said, are we crazy? And then, you know what? You take away calculus from teenagers, you are going to have a revolution on your hands. So it happened, you know what? And we paid for it. The wave of arrests began in the spring of 1981. Every day you went to school, there were 2, 3, 4, 5 desks empty. People didn't know what was happening because they always came at night, and they would take people and they would say, oh, we're just going to ask them a few questions and then we were going to let them go. And everybody believed that. When they came for me, I kind of believed it. It was late at night. I was about to take a bath. The doorbell went, and I opened the bathroom door when my mother called my name, and there were 2 guns pointed in my face. 2 Revolutionary Guards there to take me to Evin prison. At that moment, I think I left my body somehow. I didn't feel any fear. I didn't feel anything because I was 16. I was a girl growing up, listening to the Bee Gees and dancing on the beach, and now there were 2 guns pointed in my face. I didn't feel anything. I entered a state of shock that went on for 25 years. It wouldn't let go. I'm still in it, semi in it. I'm partially out. But when you get into something like that, it's very difficult to escape. It becomes you, and you become it. It takes over your being. They took me to Evin prison, and I remember my dad was crying, and I was looking at him and I was thinking, why is he crying? There's nothing wrong. They're just going to take me, ask me a few questions, and they're going to let me go. Yeah, right. My dad knew better. So they blindfolded me upon arrival. They took me to a hallway. There were hundreds of young people in that prison that was built for much less than that. So people were sitting in the hallways unable to move because there were just so many of us. And you're blindfolded, but you know what? I don't know if you have been blindfolded, but you're always able to see a little bit from that narrow strip of light underneath your blindfold. And there were so many young people. There were so many. They came, they took me for interrogation. They asked me questions. They said, have you spoken against the government? Yes. Have you written articles against the government? Yes. Did you walk out and stage a school strike? Yes. Well, none of these were secrets. Everybody knew, all of my friends knew, the principal knew, everybody knew. This was why I was in prison. Why were they asking all these stupid questions? And then they wanted the whereabouts of a girl. I had no idea where she was. She was somebody I had met only once. Apparently she was important to them. I didn't know where she was. And I told the truth because my grandma had always said, the truth shall set you free. Anyhow, not in this case. They took me down another hallway. They made me sit down and I listened as a man was screaming. Now, they might tell you torture is to get information. Maybe some of it is, but the main purpose of torture is to destroy the human spirit. That's what it does best. Now, if you get some information in the process, it's a bonus, but people usually lie under torture. They lie to get out of it. Now, I was too young to know I could lie. I thought if I lied, things would just get worse. They tied me to a bare wooden bed. I was lying down on my stomach. First, they handcuffed me, actually, and they saw that my hands are going to slide out of the cuffs, and then they decided to put both of my wrists together and then put them in one cuff, and I heard my bones crack. So I screamed my head off, and it hadn't even started yet. So they tied me up to the bare wooden bed. I was lying down on my stomach, and they tied me up really securely, and then they took off my shoes and my socks, and they lashed the soles of my feet. I can begin to tell you how much that hurts, but it's just ridiculous. I won't be able to. It's just beyond human comprehension. It is beyond anything. I have broken bones, I have had kids, I know what pain is. But that is beyond tolerance completely. Like, it's at a level, you know. If childbirth is 8, that is 12, definitely. So they beat me and they kept on asking me, where is this girl, Shahrzad? I said, I don't know. And they didn't believe me. Long story short, we don't have much time here. I was condemned to death. Back then, it was really easy to get a death sentence in Evin because thousands of people were entering the prison that was built for a few hundred. So what do? Well, there was a Sharia judge sitting in the hallway behind the desk. He would spend, if you were lucky, a minute with your file, and he would hand the sentence. You usually wouldn't even be there when this happened. This was your trial. There were no defense lawyers or anything like that. They wouldn't even tell you what your charges were. So a lot of people would receive death sentences for no good reason. None of my friends had a sentence less than 10 years. 10 years was good. It was really good. You haven't done anything. Wow, really? You just have 10 years? That's wonderful. So that was the way it was. Now, I received a death sentence, but it was reduced by one of the guards who had believed me, apparently. That's what he told me. I don't know. And he reduced my sentence to life in prison, so I was sent to the cell block. Now, I can begin to tell you what life in that cell block was like, but we don't have time, and I can just tell you that it was hard. Not enough food, no hygiene, none of that. And basically it was high school in hell because 90% of the prisoners were under the age of 18. And every day people would be called and they would come back bloody and swollen. And every day people would be called and they would never come back.